Excellent. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our event. I'm your host, Madalina Andrei, former Global Mobility Coordinator and currently Service Provider, Provider Relationship Manager. Sorry, I used to be a service provider for so many years. I keep calling myself a service provider with xpath.global. For those of you not yet familiar with xpath.global, we are the first SaaS-enabled marketplace digital ecosystem in the global mobility sector. Simply put, the first e-commerce platform in the global mobility arena that enables the direct relationship between the local and regional experts and professionals, offering specialized services such as immigration, visa, taxation, social security, or destination services, and corporate clients in need of those services in all corners of the world. This is our 12th LinkedIn Live event from the xpath.NEXUS series, a series which has main goal to become a place where we can share best practices in our industry, learn from each other, and most importantly, grow together. This episode focuses on the role of technology in the global mobility processes delivery, and it's crystal clear that to expand or improve their mobility programs, businesses are increasingly turning to technology as the global mobility departments are dealing with the new set of expectations in order to keep the companies competitive. The demand on the global mobility function to evaluate the implications of digital transformation will definitely grow, and the pressure is most likely to come both from internal and external sources, the company and the employees themselves, as well as from the outside world. Several phenomena are reshaping business models and fundamentally changing the workspace and how work is done in general, including automation, the gig economy, the growing desire for flexible work, and the spread of disruptive technologies. So how do companies via their global mobility and HR teams, and how do service providers supporting these companies take advantage of the tech available? And what is the role of technology in the global mobility service delivery? Surely we'll have some amazing answers in this session, where we'll be privy to some interesting and valuable insights from our fantastic expert panel here. But before giving the floor to my guests, I would like to thank all the attendees for joining us, watching the event live. Please feel free to drop your comments or to address any questions you might have. We'll do our best to cover those as well if time allows it. And a very big thank you to our special guests here. Now, I would kindly ask my guests to briefly introduce themselves. And I think we can do that alphabetically. So we'll start with Bianca Budai.
Thank you very much. It's always been like that ever since school, you know.
I know. I'm Andrei. I'm
yeah.
Andrei. So
you know the feeling. Thank you very much and welcome everyone. Really excited to be here. Very happy to be able to speak about my passion, which is partially GM technologies. Fortunately, we only just have 1 hour. I could talk about this for more. My name is Bianca Budai. I actually started my career in global mobility 7 years ago. And it was really the very start of my career. So I started to climb the ladder from the very start, as I would say. Starting from a very administrative, supportive, operational position. And then I grew into a partnering role, which was end-to-end assignment management globally, many countries, many assignment types. That was a great learning curve for me. And then I grew into an SME, subject matter expert position. And now I'm working as Global Mobility Program Manager at Nokia, mainly responsible for the policies and frameworks to make sure we are up to date, we follow the world trends, and our policies are best fit for the business needs. I had the chance during my career to lead a project where we implemented a system, a global mobility system. So I'm quite familiar with the topic here. It started from the very beginning, from the tender. So we went out to market, checked what's there. It was a couple of years ago, so I assume that it's already many more because the industry is growing really fast. And right now I'm working with another tool. So I had the chance to work manually with a tool, with another tool. So I hope I can share my experience with you today.
Amazing. Thanks a lot, Bianca. Thanks a lot. Marisa Jacobs.
Thank you. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure being here. I'm Marisa Jacobs from Expert Web. We are the largest independent immigration, tax, and mobility services company in South Africa, servicing corporates and multinationals in terms of their expatriate needs. I specifically head up the immigration division for the team. We've got about 150 employees who look after our clients, making sure that they have the most seamless experience possible. We also, from a technology perspective, have developed our own in-house technology to help facilitate those processes from start to end. And I'm looking forward to sharing a bit around the experience of that, feedback from clients, and just the industry as a whole. We also service not just South Africa, but across the African continent. We do design tax services for the whole region. And the continent being quite a developing continent compared to the rest of the world, we are definitely seeing interesting things around technology. We just heard this week Google investing a massive amount of money into the African continent from a technology perspective. So it should be exciting times for us the next 10 years or so from a technology perspective.
Super. Thanks a lot, Marisa. Gopi?
Hi, good morning, good evening, good afternoon to those joining in. I'm Gopi. I lead global total rewards, mobility, and leadership hiring at Quest Global, which is a pure play engineering services organization. We work with the best organizations in the world, helping them transform the world by providing the right kind of engineering solutions. Global mobility, of course, is a very, very important topic to an organization such as us, because we operate out of 16 different countries across the world, and it's just going to keep increasing, going into the future as well. So I'm really excited to be, joining this forum here today with Madalina, Marisa, Bianca, to really discuss the key elements or the key components of a good global mobility strategy, especially the technology part of it. Thank you for inviting me in, Madalina.
Amazing. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Gopi. I think Gopi, you're in a clear minority here, right? You have three dazzling ladies by your side. So I have the first question for you, actually. Would you say changes are visible in the rise of technology usage inside the global mobility departments, comparing the current situation with what was, let's say, 3 or 5 years ago?
Sure. I think it's, global mobility can't be left behind, right? Technology is all pervasive, and it's actually impacting every single, thing that we do. And global mobility is not going to be any different from that perspective. And really, over the last few months and years, that technology revolution has really just accelerated. The pandemic itself forced a complete rethink on the way technology needs to work in different areas. So absolutely, I do believe that technology, the impact of technology on global mobility is going to be significantly seen and is already being seen. To take a few examples, the way I would think about it is where earlier technology might have been more about how do we do case management better or SLAs better. I think technology will shift significantly into the areas of the overall experience, the overall enabling work from being done any place, anywhere, providing a great experience to anyone who's undergoing global mobility, taking care of aspects related to compliance. So there are several different areas where I think technology is going to make a big impact on global mobility. Madalina.
Super. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Gopi. I heard the word compliance, and whenever I hear the word compliance, my ears are all pricked up, like, ooh, compliance. So is there any direct relationship between technology and compliance? And Marisa, I would like to hear your take on this as well. Please, Gopi.
I would say,
Marisa, why don't you go ahead?
Perfect. Thanks, Gopi.
Please.
I would say the relationship between compliance and technology is more of an indirect relationship. We definitely seeing technology used to for example, if I look at the visa application process, collecting the documents, getting it submitted through to government, using technology to facilitate that submission process, to track the process. But ultimately, it still ends up with a human being to go through the application pack, go through the documents, vet those documents, and make an objective decision based on the documents that have been submitted. And even in cases where technology has taken over slightly, where there's perhaps a pre-approval or a pre-assessment done, or in the tax sense where it automatically gets, in South Africa, gets submitted and approved and followed through, there's still that manual audit process then afterwards where there is human intervention involved. So my short answer is there's very much an indirect thing and not a direct thing. And it would be interesting to see how, I mean, everyone talks about AI and how that's going to take over, but I don't see that happening very soon.
Super. Gopi?
Sure. And kind of Marisa, I think, referred to a few of those areas that I'm also, very, very keenly observing. And I absolutely agree. It's not like technology will completely replace the human part of it or that expertise part of it. But the way I think about it is that the area of compliance is a very, very complex area, right? And specifically in the area of global mobility that deals with laws of so many different countries. And within those, every single type of assignment, for example, would have a different compliance mandate, right? So given those so many complexities and so much of interdependencies that may exist in these areas, I think technology could be a great enabler in that decision making, right? Aspects like the artificial intelligence could actually expedite or make the decision making process much better and enable better, more informed, effective, and compliant decision making for the humans that are involved in this process. That's the way I look at the involvement or the role of technology in this particular space.
More accurate.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Gopi and Marisa. I know Bianca, to switch a bit to a more general questions. Let's say, well, you're coming after 2 weeks of holiday. I know that. So, what better way to kickstart your work schedule than a session on GM Tech? So, I have a general question, and then a more specific one. The general question would be, what would be your viewpoint on the role and the use and the role of the technology in general in global mobility processes? Is it helpful? Does it make your life better as a professional? Do we need it? Like a general answer.
Absolutely. If you want to hear just one word, but of course, a longer answer is that, as you've heard, I'm a big fan of technology, and I remember the times working without technology, so I know the struggles. And it's not magic, of course. Although when you spent like 2 hours before on an Excel sheet trying to calculate the cost estimation for a specific country combination and needing to reach out to like 10 different sources to get the taxes, to get the allowances. Yeah. And then if you compare it to the situation, then you push a button and you see the system working and you get the cost estimation. It seems magic indeed. But I would say that we are not in a comfortable situation with the tool as we were hoping for. So it's not like you push a button and you finished for the day. It's not like that. Our challenges didn't disappear. I would say our challenges transformed. It's not anymore about the burden of the administration, about the resources, the time needed. I remember it was 2 days in my calendar every month were blocked just for the reporting. And
in the past, you mean? In the past. Yeah, and if you compare it to what we have right now, it's really, you have to have a good setup, and then your 2 days are freed up.
So the challenge is not on that side anymore. How do you get the time? How do you get the resources? But you have to maintain the system. First of all, you have to implement it in a way that it's actually useful and it's not just causing you another burden. It's not going to be just something else you need to do on a daily basis if you are managing assignees. But in an ideal situation, it's built in a way that it's driving your work, it's helping your work, and it takes away from what you need to do offline in your memory and then in the millions other manual solutions. So I would say it transformed the work and created new challenges as well, but helped to get rid of other challenges. And also freed up some time to focus on what actually is value added for the business, for assignee management, assignee experience, thinking about how, from the assignee point of view, really, because when you are really leading a manual process, it's always like the tasks you need to do, because you have to ensure that things are in place. That's no question. You have to do that 10 steps that's on your list for the day, otherwise we will have problems later. But now that there is an enabler, something that helps you to do that, you have time to ask your assignee, how are you? How is the family? Are you there? Did you arrive on time? So I would say it's changed the mobility. It is changing the mobility role.
Super. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Bianca. The more specific question now would be, and after your answer, I would like to ask Gopi the same question. You're both using tech tools internally. What would be the main advantages of those tools, and what would be the challenges that they are solving, and what would be the challenges that they are posing additionally, right? Let's please not use names of tools, just the benefits that they bring and the challenges they solve and the challenges they cause. Please, Bianca.
Okay, so I need to go into more details on what I mentioned on the challenges it solves.
You mentioned at the beginning, Bianca, that you know the process extremely well because you've been from the beginning, right? So
Yes.
so we can start with well, not exactly with tender, but well, we can start with that, but from the implementation point of view, because yeah, that's, please.
That's maybe already on the other side, like the challenges created. So I start with the challenges solved then. So what was solved is really the administrative burden, which was huge. So it of course depends on the population that you are managing. But even if you don't have 1,000 people, you just have 100 people, it's huge, and they are in different assignment stages, and you need to track, you need to really closely monitor their visas, their assignment dates. So you cannot miss one, because then it's going to cause a real problem for you. So it solved that, maybe a little less stress and frustration on the team members, because it's not in your head anymore. It's not just in your mailbox anymore, but there is, I would say, a central database that it's making sure that nothing is forgotten and nothing is missed. Takes away that. And also the analytics part is something I really like and really enthusiastic about. So it's not anymore only about reports on assignment data, not only anymore geographic nice presentations on where our assignees are, or I don't know, male and female ratio, but actually these tools know so much more on the data analytics that you can be actually partnering with business and not only react, but proactively maybe advise and talk about business plans based on data, which hasn't happened before, at least in my experience. Being busy with all the manuality, we were not by the table in these discussions at all, pointing to the future, but we would rather react to what came, and then we did it. But now, using the data we have, which is a huge data that is stored in the system, which was not possible to be stored in an Excel previously, and also the history, which is something that was always missing. If somebody left the company, the mailbox was gone, you didn't know what happened.
You had to take it all from the beginning.
Yes. And now you have something which is there, which is central. It's not in personal mailboxes or really heads anymore, but actually it's available for the whole team. So I would say that those challenges are solved. What was created is what I realized actually during the implementation, that at the moment when you start the implementation with your service provider company, you have to be really certain about what you want. And without using systems before, you don't necessarily know what you're gonna need there, right? So, and you have to have a completely final policy because it's more difficult to make the changes afterwards. So that was our realization when we started the implementation, that our service provider came with 100 questions and we had to sit down and think about it. We didn't have the answers immediately. So that was one challenge, that we didn't have a program and process flows and everything in such a ready to use way that we just share everything with the provider, they put it in the system and we are happy. But it was actually a huge work to create that, because you have to tell the system very, very exactly what you want it to do.
Of course, the system will do whatever you tell it to do.
Yes, yes. So this was like a realization for me, that the system needs really specific instructions. Another challenge was maybe to introduce this change in the team, to make sure that people actually start to use the system and they see it beneficial and they
feed the system.
Yes, and they use it as like integrated part of their daily jobs, and not like thinking about, okay, another tool I have to keep updated, but rather like Bible, like really the central knowledge hub and the central process hub. So it was a bit difficult. I think it's a human thing. We are not always happy about changes. We like our old things. We like comfort. And when you do something for many, many years, it's difficult to say, okay, I'm trusting this machine now and I'm letting it do it for me. So it was a bit difficult.
How long, if I may ask, Bianca, how long did the implementation last, roughly?
It was between 6 or 12 months with my first experience, and the second one was a year, more than a year. It takes time. We didn't know this at the start.
Of course. Yeah. And one more question regarding this: Did you feel any change in your colleagues' behavior towards using the tech once it was implemented and they actually actively started using it and fitting it? Did they see the results and the benefits afterwards, or it's still another task they have to do on a daily program?
I would say we are getting there. We are not completely there yet. We are figuring it out still. I think it can take years, especially that this is not a one-time activity that the system is done, now you use it, but it's changing all the time. We find new features. We think that some things should work another way. So it's a constant improvement on the system as well. So what we did previously with our little process flows, we are doing it with the system now. So I don't feel that yet, that this is our Bible, as I said, and then my colleagues are using that as if this is the like primary source of everything. But it's still a little bit of trust needed between human and machine.
Thanks a lot, Bianca. Gopi, what about your experience with adopting tech?
No, see, I was smiling through when Bianca was giving her experience.
I saw that. And I was wondering, why is Gopi smiling?
No, so it's so amazing that, organizations that are so far apart geographically, so far apart in, life cycle stage, so to speak, so far apart, probably even in size and the kind of work that they do, but the challenges are quite similar, right? It maybe just manifests itself in a slightly different way, but it is still a similar challenge. So going back to your question, Madalena, about what challenges does a tech solve, or absolutely it solves several challenges. Yes. So from a perspective, the ones that it solves, all the things that Bianca just mentioned, I would just kind of add things like it creates a transparency in the system. It makes it more compliant. It provides a better experience to anyone who is using that particular product or tool, rather than when it is in a disparate, manually driven system, right? And it takes away that individual dependency, right? Definitely. And in terms of challenges that it introduces, I think, what I would say is, the best automation solution implemented on a bad process would still result in a bad result, right? So it's not really the fault of the technology or the product, really. It, I think, starts with whether we really got the process right first, whether we have understood the different interlinkages properly and created that entire workflow right. Because if
correctly
it works properly in a process, then an automation can improve it. A bad process would see the gaps getting even more emphasized by an automation solution, right? That's what would end up happening. So for me, the major challenge with any automation would be that first we have to get the process right. We have to get the right kind of process. We have to ensure that people understand the intent of that process and do it the right way, like you were saying, right? And I think Bianca was also mentioning they should not see this as an additional task. It actually is part of the task now that should become easier or better by using the particular technology. Now, my challenge related to technology is slightly different, though, Magdalena. For me, while there are fragmented technology solutions, right? Global mobility is a very vast topic, and it requires a lot of things to integrate. And I have not so far seen a technology solution bringing in those fragmented pieces together. What I mean is, for example, today we have case management solutions, which are very good. So from an immigration perspective, the case management solutions, a lot of tools that have reached significant level of maturity, and created workflows for several different kind of scenarios. But then case management in immigration is only one part of global mobility, right? Global mobility has so many other aspects.
Of course.
Whether it is that aspect of immigration, whether it is the aspect of the assignment calculation that Bianca was talking about on a spreadsheet or whatever, right? Cost of assignment calculation, whether it is a knowledge base to provide exposure to what that new culture is, what to look out for, several different aspects that are involved in a global mobility experience. And today, we are not in a situation where technology brings it all together, right? It still exists as fragmented pieces.
I would like to expand on that a bit later on, Gopi, because I have a special question for you on that. Thank you very much for Bianca. Thank you very much, Gopi and Bianca, for your answer so far. Marisa, thinking about your clients, your expatriates as final beneficiary of services, would you say technology is playing any role in their lives, in the expatriates' lives and their overall relocation, international assignment experience? Does it make it better? Does it improve it in any way?
I think on a very basic level, when an expatriate is asked to go on assignment, I think technology has a massive impact just in being able to research the country that you're going to. On social media, there are now groups that will say Indian nationals in South Africa, and there's a whole group that would be able to answer questions for them. So in that sense, I think technology helps a great deal with the unknown. People don't have to pay school fees in terms of making the same mistakes over and over. They can just ask someone else the same question. And so I think in that way, technology really helps with the experience of relocating to another country. And then on a more specific level, in terms of the actual mobility process, to apply for the visa, getting your welcome pack, having that look-see visit, and technology facilitating that process. I do think that it definitely helps to have information available at your fingertips, having technology available to be able to access and communicate. But I do think whenever there is expatriate assignment involved, there's also a lot of hand-holding. And they do still appreciate that one-on-one communication, the human element of it. It's something where technology helps, but only if it is coupled with a very one-on-one human experience where they can still feel like they're being heard. Their challenges are not generic, they are very unique and need to be addressed uniquely. So it's an interesting balance.
Thanks a lot. Thanks, Marisa. Would you agree, Bianca? What is the corporate point of view on this? Is the employee experience improved when tech is involved?
Definitely, and I like that Marisa was referring to the balance, because I have the same thought. It improved very much, them having like a central page, their own page where they can log in. Majority of the systems have this. This kind of their own portal. When they go in, they can access country information, they can access their documents, their policy, their contacts, everything in one place. Before that, you usually received some things at the start of your assignment, some things during, and if you were looking for any information, you probably had to go through your mailbox or call someone. And with this, actually, our lives as GM is also a bit better, because we receive less and less questions, because we can always just direct them to that page, which ideally includes everything that they might need. But I have to add that I agree that the human touch is needed. Technology can never replace that human touch. When assignees move, they say that actually the two biggest stress factors in your life is changing jobs and moving. And the assignments are going the two at the same time, especially if you take your kids, take your whole family, uprooting your life before. So it's a huge moment, a life-changing moment for many people. So there should be someone who is there. And I really believe in this single point of contact model. And I think this is appreciated by the assignees as well, that from the very start, there is someone who you can always turn to if it just, I don't know, you want to discuss a stressful situation, there is someone who can help you with. That's what I'm always saying, that GM partners are not only assignment managers, but like psychologists, therapists, girlfriends, boyfriends, everything.
A lot of
you have
heads.
to provide that
a lot of heads.
Support. A lot of heads, right? Yeah, sure, I'm taking care about your visa. Let's discuss your pet, and, your children. How are your children? So it's really everything. Partners are amazing. That's a really, really complex position. So that human touch always needs to be there.
Super. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Bianca. Gopi, talking about employee experience, the current pandemic actually redesigned the whole EE concept and its importance. Did you make use of any tools during this period to locate, to track your employees, to support them? And also a second question related to this would be to take into consideration the new rising work from home or work from anywhere work scenarios.
Yeah. The pandemic was, definitely a rule changer, right? In several different areas, and a big disruptor. Overnight, almost, right? Things changed so suddenly. So we were in that same situation as well. We, being a very global organization, had expats in several different countries. And during that early months of 2020, the March timeframe, I think, when different countries started going into a lockdown. Now suddenly, a lot of our expats were facing like huge amount of difficulties. Now the difficulties ranged on several areas. One, there was just the pandemic itself. The fear of health of themselves and their loved ones who are with them in that particular place, and who are far away from them, where they do not have any control of how to, visit and help them. Right. So that itself was one major stressor. But added to that was things about what's happening with their workplace. They can't go to their workplace. They do not know, because of the changing immigration laws at that time, right? They do not know what happens to their immigration status in that particular country, right? They do not know whether they are covered sufficiently in that particular area, something they probably were not worried about till then. But suddenly a lot of different such insecurities and worries came in almost overnight. So our response to that, Madalena, was, and we had to make do with whatever we had, really. Right? It was not a time where we could really think about bringing in any new technology. So we really had to make do with what we had. And that's where I think, to the point that Marisa and Bianca earlier mentioned about the human touch. Human touch can never be replaced, right? we actually had to do probably bring in more human touch at that time, right? And they were enabled by technology. What we had to do is put in more people who were actually contacting the individuals who were the expats in different places and providing a one-on-one experience to them, right? Communicating to them continuously, providing them the latest information, providing them the latest support systems that we are putting in place as a global organization to ensure that they remain safe, they are able to come back to their homes, and whatever was involved in that particular thing. Using the technology that was available, whether it was a WhatsApp group, so there were WhatsApp groups being created of groups that were, stuck in different places where we were providing continuous level of information. There were several communication channels that we opened up to provide what's happening with the organization, what's happening in this particular country, what are the changing rules, right? Several different things that we did, and I really think at that time it was more the human touch, but enabled by, by that technology, ensuring that people were able to, stay and work comfortably wherever they were, right? And given assurance about them being taken care of in that particular, crisis situation. I think that was really what was going on in that pandemic situation.
Thanks, Gopi. So we're using technology, we're implementing it. If we're not implementing it, perhaps we're thinking to implement it. But many voices claim that mobility practitioners seem to be underusing the available technology. And I would have a question now, actually 2 questions for Marisa. Would you say this is correct from your point of view as a regional immigration expert provider? Well, you're covering several countries in Africa. Are providers underusing tech available? What tools do you have in place to ensure compliance overall for your clients? Or if you don't have anything in place, if you're thinking to have something in the future?
I think it's a bit of a mix. It is, I wouldn't want to paint everyone with the same brush. I do think there are, we do have technology tools within the business, and our clients insist on those technology tools to be able to.
That would be the second question. Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, so they actually insist on having those tools available to be able to track their assignees and to track where exactly it is in the process and when statuses will be expiring. So being able to proactively to manage that. And I do think, so like I say, they insist on having it. So most of them are extremely good at using it. They need it. And I think the better your technology tool is, the more mobility practitioners will end up using it, because they use it for if they're in a meeting and they have to report back, they'll just pull a report from the system to be able to give that feedback. And in their day-to-day management of the assignees, they're able to log into a system and just see where it's at. So I think it depends on what they use it for, what they need it for. And also, Bianca touched on it a little bit earlier, is the pool of assignees. When you have 10 or 20 assignments, you sort of know off the top of your head exactly where everyone's at and what you need to do. Yeah. But as soon as that number gets bigger, our largest client has 1,200 assignees just in South Africa, never mind the rest of Africa. And then it becomes essential to on almost a weekly basis to be able to harness technology. And there's no way that you can manage that without using technology.
Yeah, Excel has its limits, right? Excel has its limits.
It's wonderful. We all love Excel.
We love Excel, of course we do, but it has its limits.
All started somewhere. But yeah, so in my experience, mobility professionals are extremely pro technology, and embrace using it if it is. I mean, we've all touched on that it has certain benefits and problems that it solves, but it also has challenges. But as long as the solutions outweigh the challenges, I think it will always be embraced and more and more used.
Yeah, amazing, Marisa. Basically, what you're saying is that the need is triggered from the corporate side, right? This is a need that they need fulfilled.
Definitely.
Excellent. Bianca and Gopi, what about the service providers? So we know the corporate side really needs it, right? It's crystal clear. What about the supply chain, right? Do you feel local experts should do more about it? Do you feel there is a lag between what is happening on the service provider side and your needs that have to be met?
I think there is no question about that if it's needed for a service provider today or not. In all our tenders or all our market researches that we took before, it was always the prerequisite before even talking to a service provider company to make sure that they are using a system. I think those times are over when it was acceptable to not to use it.
That's a prerequisite from the tender
yeah, from the very
stage.
first point. You always start with that, and you want to know what kind of system they are using, if it's an own system that they created, or if this is something that they brought. How compatible is it with our system? This is a big question. And I think this is really an area where improvement can be done. I know on our side as well, but what we are still in the middle of building is this ecosystem to have connection between all the systems that our different service providers all over the world are using and our system. So it's not anymore email service orders or not even system notifications, but rather really a central hub of everything. We are working on it really closely with our vendors to be able to create that. But I see that this is not an easy thing to do. And the systems do not communicate with each other in a way that it would make it easy to connect them. So we are a little bit struggling with that because everybody started to use the systems a couple of years ago, I think. But then it created a lot of different systems all over the world. And at the end, this is the same information. This is the same information that you need. And, we are playing these little games of, okay, this field means that field in your system. How do you call this? How do I call this? So it's not automatic. This is a little bit of struggle there. Yeah. So I think there is still way to go, but I don't see any issue with like service providers not having system, or we have to struggle with their manual processes.
So your feeling is that the service providers out there are pretty prepared from a technological point of view to support you, the needs that you have, to support you in fulfilling the needs that you have. Excellent.
That's a clear yes.
Super.
I have a slightly,
you were talking about earlier about fragmentation. I think that was
correct. Exactly. So for me, it will be really about, yes, the supply chain does use technology because, I think like someone mentioned, that's like a hygiene factor, right? I mean, you just can't do without it. So you will definitely have every, service provider worth its money would absolutely need to have a technology solution that covers at least the basic parts of things. For example, whether it's case management or SLA tracking or document management or things like that, right? However, I think when we look at it from a holistic, perspective on the overall global mobility front, I still feel there is less tech adoption. And maybe if I could take it one step forward and say, there is a need for innovation in the different use cases that could exist in the from a perspective of technology in global mobility. Right. So I mean, right now we are still talking about the case management, SLAs, and all of those aspects. But like I was earlier mentioning, is it possible for certain decision models to be expedited or facilitated by the use of technology? Is it possible for certain aspects of compliance to be, red flagged by technology itself, right? Is it possible to improve that experience that the individual has? I think, Madalena, you were once mentioning to me in an earlier conversation about the use of augmented reality or virtual reality, etc., to give an experience to an assignee about where he or she may be staying in the future, right? The neighborhood and the how the house is, or things like that. I mean, I think there are so many use cases that are possible. There are immense possibilities from that perspective, which if there are good technology solutions that could pick up that use case and really provide a solution to it, there will be several organizations who would want to implement it as part of their global mobility program. And the only one additional thing I would add is, the data privacy rules recently, right? Whether it's GDPR, right, or several others that other countries have adopted, that is also going to, put a lot of emphasis, for organizations to invest in the right technology solutions with their service provider. For example, you don't want to send data, or because most of this global mobility information, which is immigration oriented, is quite sensitive data of that particular individual and his or her dependents, right? So when you send that over unprotected systems like emails, you're creating risks for that individual and for the organization. So those kind of laws will also, I think, force organizations and their supply chain partners to invest in better technology solutions.
Excellent. Thank you, Gopi, very much. We're discussing here, well, great achievements in private sector, right? With corporates and expert service providers trying to improve their processes and embedding the tech tools in their daily operations. Gopi mentioned VR and AR and AI. We're talking all day long in acronyms. But the huge majority of the processes involved in an international assignment, well, immigration and tax mostly, of course, depend on the national state authorities, right? So, okay, we're all geared up for the tech advancements, the tech developments. What about, for example, the immigration department in the National Immigration Office? And Marisa, I would love to hear your take on this. Would you say the mobility tools, well, you as a professional are using, or other mobility tools that other service providers are using, could be connected to the state authorities at some point in time? How far still are we from this scenario? Please do not tell me that you're all connected in South Africa, because that will ruin my question. So please do not tell me that.
I've given you a heads up if that was the case. Unfortunately not. So I think from a government perspective, it's the wheels move slowly, and so I think we're still a while away. There is harnessing of technology in certain ways, but much slower than in the corporate world. We're starting to see in South Africa, we are finally looking at having e-visas for short-term visitors, as many countries have adopted long ago, and we are now starting to incorporate that. But there's, I think, and as we're starting to see technology develop where you can use facial recognition, and where facial recognition is now a much better way to actually authenticate someone's identity than a face-to-face visit. We're starting to, I think, as that becomes more the norm, we'll start seeing government adopting such things. We also, I mean, from a documentation perspective, we just deal so much, not from our side because we deal with corporates, but whenever you engage with the government authorities and third parties, the amount of fraudulent documentation that's received. And I think that is something else that makes technology quite scary for government, is the uncertainty of how do they then control that. We're starting to see things like share code in the UK, and privy seals, and QR, specialist QR type codes that can't be duplicated. That is really helping with the authentication of documentation. And I think as the risk, as that technology develops, the government will more and more start embracing technology and how it can help them in terms of immigration processes. I think on the tax side, there's been a way better embracing of technology. From a numbers perspective, we see a lot more technology used across the African continent from a tax perspective. Immigration, really slow uptake. I think we still many years away.
But there is hope, right?
Absolutely. No, I absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we've seen it now with the vaccination passports, and where in the beginning it was, I mean, South Africa most certainly, just a little card that we signed with the code. And now in the last week or two, as we're starting to engage with other countries to make sure that people can travel, and the technology has taken over, and you can now have an e-passport so that the other country can recognize that. So I think the pandemic in many ways have advanced and accelerated the use of technology. And I think we'll see that more and more in the next year or two, how it gets incorporated.
Excellent, excellent, Marisa. That takes me to the next question for you. I know Expat Web conducts the annual critical skills survey, looking at skills shortages in your country. How does technology skills feature in this survey? Can you tell us a bit more?
Sure. So the survey, we've run it since 2016, and so it's the 5th year, and the results for 2021 was released in March this year. And technology, as with all the countries globally, is highly featured in terms of skill shortages. There is just the demand for technology professionals across the ICT sector just far outweighs supply, and we definitely see countries competing for these skills and attracting,
of course,
guys from countries. On the critical skills survey, the latest one, in technology professionals is the second most sought after skill in South Africa after engineers. So it's highly sought after, and we also lose a lot of our technology expertise in South Africa to other countries, which then just increases the demand even more. And we import a lot of skills from India, as many other countries do, where there is a high volume of technology expertise. Yeah.
Super. Thanks a lot, Marisa. Well, that's a great project. What would be the risks or any challenges in adopting technology? Bianca and Gopi, if you'd like to take this question, how easy, to make it a bit more specific, how easy it is for teams to adapt new technology, and how hard it is for you as a leader to push for a technology adoption you believe it's worth? Not necessarily among your colleagues, not necessarily among your peers, but also at possibly management level as well.
What I see is not automatic, and it doesn't happen overnight. So you can have an implementation date fixed from the very start, and colleagues will need to start to use the system from that date. But this change in mindset will certainly not happen on that day. It takes time. It took more time in my experience as I thought it would, honestly, because that's what I said, that you have this really comfortable old way of doing things, and it's just difficult to let it go. And
so
really
Bianca, if you allow me, so it took more, not necessarily because the difficulty in understanding the technology, right? It took more because of the humans that were supposed to use it.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I am on that. And also, we also expected this to run from day one perfectly, but it just never happens.
Never does.
Never does. And this like fixing little things that you didn't think about, finding little bugs that you never found during the testing, this is normal. And this is something that you have to accept. And this is also what you have to accept as a user, that something was provided for your own good, you start to use it, and it frustrates you that you have to stop your process because that thing is not working. You have to maybe even think about going back to the old way just to quickly fix it because the business is sitting on your back and then
you have to solve it. Yeah, you have to solve it now.
Yes. And you cannot wait for our service provider to work on this little bug for 2 days because you really have to do that. And if something is starting like that and the change management is not there and the expectations are not handled and the expectation from the team is that it's going to be working, this is not a good start. So it has to be clear from the very start. All the team members have to know how a system implementation works, that it's not a magic, it's not happening very overnight, and it's not working perfectly from the start. So this is something you have to accept. And as soon as you find a problem, you report it, it's going to get solved. Next time, the problem will not be there. But it's just difficult if you have your daily tasks and you have the pressure to really perform on a level also in a timely manner that you did before. So what is still a bit difficult to make sure team members not only in my team, but I see this all over GM, to have this understanding, and also have that understanding that this system is not stable. I mean, it's constantly changing. So it's not something that you create and it's there and it's working, but there is always new features that can be used. It's
always like a living organism.
Yes, what a beautiful way.
Let's make it a bit poetic.
Yes, yes. So I think this was the difficult part that I am still seeing, that whenever there is an issue, and this is how it starts, and then in people's mind, okay, this stupid system is not working again. And if this is the mindset, how a system usage starts, then it's really difficult to fix that and then go back to the trust.
So true. Thank you, Bianca. Gopi?
Yeah, I absolutely agree on the change management front. For me, any adoption of technology, the first and foremost aspect is the intent. Is the intent really clear, and is it clearly articulated as well, right? What's the actual objective of that particular implementation or adoption that we are going for, right? I think that should be very clear. That should be well debated, discussed, clarified, and then made clear to all the key stakeholders of that particular implementation process. I think that's number one. Once that happens, I think the acceptance of any such technology will be a lot more. The adoption will be easier, hassle-free, smooth. The only other thing I would say is, I think gone are the days where organizations would have the patience to implement big technology solutions over a 1.5 to 2 year period, etc. I think the world is changing too rapidly. Rules are changing very rapidly. The needs of organizations are changing very rapidly. So technology solutions will also need to be very flexible and agile, right? I think what the future would be is implementations that are much faster, right? And more agile and permit a lot more flexibility, right? To permit us to operate in the kind of dynamic world that we are living in. Because what you don't want is you take on a technology solution which has an implementation line of, say 1.5 to 2 years, and then about 6 months later, 7 months later, certain things have changed, which now cannot be incorporated in that technology just because it is so inflexible, right? So organizations don't want that. They will not have the patience, to be able to deal with such things. So I think the technology providers who will be successful in the future will be those who can provide solutions that are very agile and permit a lot of flexibility to the organizations that implement it.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Gopi. Thanks a lot. Actually, thanks everybody. I think that would wrap up our session. It's been amazing. I'm sure our audience has found it extremely interesting. We have a lot of people jumping in and saying hello. Thanks a lot for taking the time to join us, and thank you very much for the great insights you have shared with us. Thank you for all those who watched us and for being with us. In case you need further expert advice, or if you have any kind of questions, please reach out to my guests directly. I'm sure they'll be happy to help. Meanwhile, please follow our Expat Global pages on LinkedIn and YouTube to get updates on our new live events with hot topics in the global mobility sector. And I guess I'll see everybody in 2 weeks' time. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you. Had a lot of fun today.
Thank you. Bye.
Goodbye.